Today, I want to talk about something that affects every one of us, whether at work, at home, in relationships, or even within ourselves. These are the 6 UN acceptable behaviors that should never be tolerated, no matter who it comes from, how long you've known them, or how much you think you owe them. Respect is non-negotiable. It is not something to be earned after proving yourself. It is not a reward for good behavior, a badge for compliance, or a privilege reserved for the few. It is the minimum, the absolute minimum. Every human being deserves to be treated with dignity and decency, simply by virtue of being human. Yet far too often, people tolerate being talked down to, ignored, humiliated, or belittled because they've been convinced that respect must be earned or negotiated. That's a lie. One of the most dangerous lies society teaches. The truth is, when you allow disrespect to go unchecked, you send the message that it is acceptable. And when something becomes acceptable, it becomes normal. That's how toxic patterns are formed, not only in your relationships, but in your own mindset. You can tell a lot about a person by how they treat someone they don't need anything from. If they're kind to a boss, but cruel to a waiter, if they speak politely to a client, but shout at their partner, that's not kindness, it's performance. True respect isn't situational. It's not reserved for titles, social status, or convenience. It's a value you live by, not a tool you use to manipulate outcomes. And if someone treats you as less than, if they speak over you, dismiss your voice, minimize your feelings, or constantly try to make you feel small, then understand, they are not just being rude, they are violating a basic human standard. And no amount of loyalty, history, or love justifies that. People will test you to see what they can get away with. The first time someone disrespects you, it's on them. The second time, it's a pattern. And the third time, it's no longer about them. It's about you. It's about what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you've grown accustomed to. Don't let politeness become your prison. You don't have to raise your voice, lose your temper, or become aggressive, but you must be firm. You must let people know, either through words or actions, that disrespect will not find a home with you, that your time, your presence, and your energy demand a certain standard, not because you think you're better than anyone else, but because you know your worth. There's a difference between humility and self-betrayal. Being humble doesn't mean staying silent while others talk over you. Being humble doesn't mean shrinking to make others feel comfortable. Being humble doesn't mean tolerating disrespect in the name of peace. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of respect, of mutual understanding, of shared values. And any peace that requires you to accept less than you deserve is not peace. It's control dressed up in quiet. Many people confuse fear with respect. They think that being feared earns authority, that being loud commands attention, that dominance equals power. But the truth is, genuine respect can't be forced. It can't be bullied out of people. It is offered freely, or it's not real. And when you respect yourself deeply, you become very clear about what you will and won't allow. You stop explaining yourself to people who've already decided not to listen. You stop chasing approval from those who never planned to give it. And you stop staying silent in rooms that mock your voice. There is nothing weak about drawing the line. There is nothing rude about refusing to engage with someone who disrespects you. There is nothing arrogant about knowing you deserve to be spoken to with kindness. Respect is the foundation of every healthy interaction. Without it, nothing can thrive. Not trust, not love, not collaboration. So when someone violates that basic standard, you don't need to explain, argue, or plead. You simply need to step away or speak up. But above all, never accept disrespect disguised as sarcasm, cruelty masked as honesty, or manipulation wrapped in charm. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to live in alignment with your values, and respect is the first one that should never be compromised. Boundaries matter. They are not walls to keep people out, but rather guidelines to protect what is important within. They are a declaration of what you value, how you expect to be treated, and what you are not willing to tolerate. Without boundaries, your time, energy, mental space, and even your sense of self can be slowly drained by people who may not have bad intentions, but who overstep simply because they were never told where the line is. Setting boundaries is not selfish, it is necessary. In fact, the people who struggle the most with setting boundaries are often the ones who care deeply, who give too much, who bend until they break, hoping that their kindness will be enough to be treated fairly in return. But kindness without boundaries often turns into resentment. It is not your job to be available to everyone all the time. It is not your duty to say yes to every request, to accommodate every demand, or to make sure everyone around you is always comfortable while you're silently suffering. There's a cost to that kind of living. It starts small. Maybe you skip a break to help someone else finish a task, or you take on one more thing, even though you're already exhausted. Over time, you begin to feel invisible, overwhelmed, trapped in a cycle where your value seems tied to your usefulness to others. That's what happens when boundaries are weak or non-existent. You begin to disappear in the service of keeping everyone else happy. Boundaries are not about control, they are about clarity. They are a way of teaching people how to treat you, not by demanding or threatening, but by being clear and consistent. If someone constantly interrupts your quiet time, if they expect immediate responses to messages at all hours, if they guilt trip you for needing space, then a boundary is required. And here's the truth. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will be the most uncomfortable when you start setting them. They may accuse you of changing, of being cold or distant, of not caring. But what they're really saying is, I was comfortable taking more from you than I should have, and now I'm not. That discomfort is not your problem to fix. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. They say, I matter too. They remind you that your well-being is not secondary to anyone else's expectations. They protect your energy from being drained by obligations that don't serve your purpose. They allow you to show up more fully, more authentically, because you are no longer running on empty or living in quiet frustration. And boundaries are not just for others, they're also for yourself. Sometimes you need to create internal boundaries, like limiting your time on distractions, saying no to self-sabotaging thoughts, or refusing to engage in toxic patterns that you've outgrown. Growth happens when you not only know what to say yes to, but also what to say no to without guilt. People will not always like your boundaries. Some will challenge them, some will try to guilt you out of them, and some may even walk away. That's okay. Boundaries are filters, not fences. They don't keep love out, they keep harm out. The relationships that are meant for you will not fall apart because you respected yourself. In fact, boundaries strengthen healthy relationships. They create trust, predictability, and a space where both people can thrive without fear of being overrun or ignored. If a connection can't survive your boundaries, it was never rooted in mutual respect to begin with. So whether it's in your personal life, your career, your friendships, or your family, remember that boundaries are a statement of your worth. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your time, your energy, or your emotions. You have a right to protect your peace, to rest without guilt, and to prioritize your mental health. Boundaries don't push people away. They reveal who is willing to meet you with the same respect you offer them. Toxicity destroys growth. It doesn't always happen all at once, or in ways that are immediately visible. Often it's subtle. It starts small, maybe in the form of passive-aggressive comments, a culture of gossip, a lack of appreciation, or relationships built on manipulation rather than mutual support. Over time, these patterns seep into the atmosphere of your life and begin to suffocate the very things that keep you moving forward: motivation, confidence, creativity, peace. When toxicity is present, even the most talented, driven, or kind-hearted people can begin to shrink. Their voices get quieter, their passion dulls, and they start to question their own instincts. Whether in a workplace, a friendship, a family, or a relationship, toxic behavior poisons the environment. It makes you second-guess yourself. It makes you feel like no matter how much you give, it's never enough. It creates conditions where survival becomes more important than progress, where fitting in becomes more important than standing out. When you're surrounded by toxicity, you become focused on avoiding conflict instead of pursuing growth. You spend more time managing drama than you do building anything meaningful. And slowly, your world becomes smaller, not because you don't want more, but because the environment convinces you that more is impossible, unrealistic, or not meant for you. One of the most damaging effects of toxicity is how it redefines your standards. You start to normalize dysfunction. You make excuses for bad behavior. You tell yourself that this is just how things are, that it's not that bad, or that you should be stronger, more patient, more forgiving. But enduring toxic behavior isn't strength, it's a drain on your soul. True strength lies in the courage to walk away from what dims your light. And while not all toxic behavior is intentional, the impact is the same. Intent doesn't erase damage. Someone doesn't have to be cruel on purpose for their actions to hurt you repeatedly. If the result of someone's presence in your life is that you feel smaller, anxious, confused, or chronically tired, then the effect is toxic, no matter how it's dressed up. Toxicity often masquerades as love, loyalty, or humor. It shows up in the person who says they're just joking, but always at your expense. It hides in the colleague who constantly undermines you while smiling to your face. It exists in the friend who keeps score, who celebrates your failures more than your victories. It hides behind family ties, where manipulation is justified with phrases like, "You owe me," or "That's just how we are." But no connection, no history, no bloodline gives anyone the right to damage your spirit. Just because someone's been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they deserve to stay there. Growth requires safety. It needs space to breathe, to explore, to fail, and try again. You can't grow in an environment where you're always walking on eggshells. You can't become your best self when your energy is constantly spent protecting yourself from attacks, whether subtle or direct. A healthy environment encourages progress. It allows you to speak freely, to take risks, to rest without guilt. It doesn't punish you for having boundaries or shame you for having needs. In a toxic space, even your best intentions get twisted, and your efforts often go unnoticed or unappreciated. That kind of environment doesn't just slow growth, it crushes it. The truth is, we become like the energy we surround ourselves with. If you live in negativity long enough, it begins to alter the way you see the world and yourself. It rewires your expectations. It teaches you to settle, to expect less, to stop dreaming. Toxicity does not just hurt you in the moment, it shapes your future if you let it linger too long. That's why it's so important to recognize the signs and take action. Whether that means having hard conversations, creating space, or walking away altogether, protecting yourself from toxicity is not abandonment, it's survival. Because when you finally remove yourself from environments that drain you, you'll realize how much more you're capable of. Growth doesn't just require effort, it requires a healthy space to thrive. Silence enables abuse. It gives permission without ever speaking a word. When harmful behavior is not called out, when pain is endured quietly, when mistreatment is tolerated in the name of keeping the peace, it doesn't just continue, it grows. Abuse, whether emotional, psychological, verbal, or physical, thrives in secrecy. It survives because it's protected by silence, often from the very people who are suffering the most. That silence may come from fear, shame, confusion, or the hope that things will change. But the truth is, abuse rarely ends on its own. It ends when it's exposed, when someone speaks up, when the silence is finally broken. Many people stay silent, not because they are weak, but because they've been made to believe their voice doesn't matter. They've been told that speaking up is a betrayal, that it will cause more harm than good, or that no one will believe them anyway. That internal narrative is often shaped by the abuser themselves, someone who carefully chips away at self-esteem, manipulates the truth, and makes the victim question their reality. That is the power of abuse, not just the hurtful actions, but the erosion of confidence that makes someone stay quiet. And yet, every time abuse is met with silence, it sends a message to the abuser that they can continue without consequence. Silence is not neutral, it is a response, and unfortunately, it is often interpreted as acceptance. Culturally, silence has been glorified in some settings. People are praised for being strong when they suffer in silence. They are told to take the high road, to let it go, or to not make a scene. These phrases, though often well-meaning, become tools of suppression. They discourage confrontation, accountability, and truth. But there is no strength in suppressing harm. There is no wisdom in pretending everything is fine when it's not. There is only damage, slow, deep, and lasting. Speaking up about abuse isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming truth. It's about protecting yourself, and possibly others, who might suffer next.
Abusers don't always stop because they feel guilt. They stop when they face consequences. Sometimes the silence doesn't come from the person being hurt, but from those around them. Friends, coworkers, family members who see the signs, hear the stories, or witness the behavior, but choose to look the other way. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to be the one to stir the pot, but by staying silent, they become part of the problem. Silence from bystanders gives power to the abuser and isolates the victim even more. One of the most painful parts of being abused is not just the harm itself, but the feeling that no one cares enough to say anything about it. There are also times when silence is enforced, when victims are threatened, bribed, or manipulated into keeping quiet. They are told that speaking up will ruin lives, break apart families, or destroy reputations, and because they care so deeply, they stay silent, often putting the abuser's image above their own healing. But protecting someone who hurts others is never noble. It's not loyalty, it's self-betrayal, and it keeps the cycle alive. The longer abuse is hidden, the more damage it does, not just to the person suffering, but to every relationship they have, to their sense of trust, their emotional safety, their ability to thrive. Breaking the silence doesn't always mean shouting from the rooftops. It can start with a conversation, a journal entry, a call to a friend, a quiet admission to oneself that something is not right. Every step taken to name the abuse is a step away from its control. It is a shift in power, a refusal to be silenced any longer. No one should ever have to suffer alone or in the dark. No pain should be considered too inconvenient to acknowledge. Abuse feeds on silence. It withers in the light, and until it is confronted, it will continue to claim lives, not always physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Speaking up is not easy. It is terrifying, but it is necessary, because every time one person breaks the silence, they open the door for others to do the same, and that's how cycles break, not with revenge, but with truth, with courage, with the refusal to stay quiet any longer. Self-worth comes first. It is the foundation for every decision you make, every boundary you set, and every relationship you choose to maintain or walk away from. When you truly understand your self-worth, you stop begging for love, attention, or validation. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into places that were never meant for you. You stop accepting love simply because that's what's being offered. Self-worth isn't about arrogance or thinking you're better than anyone. It's about recognizing that you are enough, just as you are, without needing to be approved, fixed, or saved by someone else. The way you treat yourself sets the tone for how others treat you. If you constantly doubt your value, tolerate disrespect, or such, people will mirror that energy. But when you carry yourself with self-respect and unshakable inner confidence, others are forced to meet you at that level or fall away. And sometimes, people do fall away, not because you did something wrong, but because your growth highlighted their inability to value you properly. That's not your loss, that's your liberation. A strong sense of self-worth helps you see clearly what aligns with your peace and what threatens it. It helps you walk away from toxic dynamics without explaining yourself endlessly. It gives you the clarity to say no when something doesn't feel right, and the courage to wait for what you truly deserve, rather than settling out of fear or loneliness. So many people search for happiness in other people's hands. They believe that love will complete them, that success will prove their value, or that someone else's approval will finally make them feel whole. But external things can only reflect what already exists inside you. They cannot create it. If you don't believe in your own worth, no amount of compliments, attention, or affection will ever feel like you will continue to chase what you already have the power to give yourself. The irony is, the moment you stop chasing validation and honor your own worth, you become more attractive, more respected, and more powerful than ever. People can sense when someone knows who they are and refuses to be shaken by the opinions of others. Self-worth also means forgiving yourself. Too often, we tie our value to our mistakes, our past, or the things we failed to do. We carry shame that doesn't belong to us and punish ourselves with guilt that solves nothing. But you are not your worst moment. You are not the version of yourself that made decisions out of fear, confusion, or pain. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to evolve. Holding on to regret doesn't serve their self-worth. It strangles it. Learning to speak to yourself with kindness To accept your flaws without judgment and to move forward without shame is one of the most powerful ways to reclaim your inner value. People with strong self-worth are not perfect. They still feel insecure sometimes. They still experience rejection, failure, and fear. But they don't let those moments define them. They bounce back quicker. They know that a bad day doesn't make them a bad person. That being rejected doesn't make them unworthy. That someone's inability to love them properly is not a reflection of their value, but of the other person's limitations. When self-worth is rooted deep within you, you no longer need permission to be yourself. You stop waiting for the world to validate your existence. You show up fully, speak truthfully, and live freely, because you know that your value is not up for debate. Putting your self-worth first doesn't mean you won't care about others. It simply means you won't abandon yourself in the process of caring. It means you will not trade your peace for approval or your dignity for belonging. It means that you understand one truth that can change everything. The way you love yourself sets the standard for how the world is allowed to love you. When you hold your worth sacred, everything in your life begins to align with that truth. You stop settling, you stop chasing, you start attracting, and that shift can change everything.